Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all. My name is Matt, and I'm a recent Master of Research graduate from Macquarie University, and today I'd like to talk to you about some of the research conducted by my lab. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues at the Complexity in Action Research Labs, all of whom were instrumental in helping this research come to fruition. I'd like to extend a special thank you to Dr. Patrick Nalepka and Professor Michael J. Richardson, both of whom helped me prepare this presentation. Furthermore, I'd also like to acknowledge our partners at the Defence Science and Technology Group within the Australian Government Department of Defence who helped fund this research. This experiment was part of a larger research project which aimed to investigate communication and coordination in team settings. The overall goal of this is to develop artificial agents that can effectively work as part of a team in variable situations. So one of the ways in which we're investigating this research project is that we at the lab created a new video game task where we asked participants to work as a team to collect and contain a group of freely moving robotic agents. Effectively, what we're asking them to do is to work as a team to gather up all these robotic agents and contain them in a central location for a fixed period of time. So I'll just show you a quick clip of it, just so you have an understanding of exactly what we were doing.
All right, so red, get those three in front of you. Fuchsia, that one in front of you, and then directly straight of you, northwest, there's two more in the distance. Blue to your east, there's one. And then blue, there'll be one to your northwest as well, if you could link them up together. Fuchsia, hopefully you see the three in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, good.
Listen up. Is there any place that I can go?
You're red, yeah?
Yeah.
Go east, go east.
East.
East, yep. Go straight east. There's one more there. There's one east. Bring that in, and you're good to go. Just contain the rest.
Yeah, I see him.
Blue goes southwest with your two, and then fuchsia goes straight south with your three.
So as you can see within the task, we actually have two distinct roles. We have that of the herder, which is the top screens and the bottom left screen, who they were the ones interacting with the robotic agents directly and moving them. And at the bottom we had the operator, who was not actually directly interacting with the agents. Rather, what they were doing was just giving directions to the herders. So for this specific experiment, what we actually did was we removed the role of the operator and instead focused just on the herders. So in assessing a larger research project, the goal of this specific experiment and what I'll be addressing in this presentation, is how changing teams' access to information in this search and containment task influenced their behavior and how this affected their performance. Of particular interest to us in our research is understanding how teams effectively divide up task labor in order to facilitate task success. So in task coordination in general, the ability of co-actors to effectively divide up the labor of a task is crucial to their ability to achieve task success. So this can be seen in very simple rhythmic tasks like beating in a post, all the way up to more complex tasks which actually involve team members doing different tasks to work towards a larger task goal. What's key in their ability to actually achieve task success and to maintain this effective division of labor is their ability to maintain situational awareness, to know not just what their own actions are and how they affect task success, but to keep a general understanding of how the task is progressing and what their team members are doing. This allows them to continuously monitor and update their own actions to contribute towards task success, as well as avoid impeding upon the progress of their team members in order to allow everyone to be maximally contributing towards task success. So what this brings me to is the research questions behind this particular experiment. So firstly, we're interested in how do teams divide labor and how does task context affect this organization? And secondly, what patterns of behavior reflect situational awareness in team contexts? So there has been a fair amount of research into how soccer players maintain situational awareness and how this affects their performance on the field. So what has been shown in both kind of experimental practice sessions as well as real-life professional soccer games is that the players who scan their environment more, as measured by exploratory head movements, will perform better across a variety of metrics. And what is interesting is that The rate at which they explore their task environment has been indicated to be context sensitive, that players will explore the task environment more on a needs basis. So, for example, depending on their role, where they are on the pitch, what the phase of play is, generally when players are in a more proximal situation with a greater time constraint, a greater time pressure, there's a greater need for them to maintain a situational awareness, and they'll actually explore the task environment more. And so in this sense, what this indicates is that the degree to which we search our task environment and maintain a situational awareness is actually very much environmentally constrained. Interestingly, the degree to which a behavior is environmentally constrained or involuntarily driven versus more self-driven can actually be assessed by looking at the structure of the variance of a behavior when looking at the time series of that behavior. So more specifically, by looking at the signal and seeing if it's more self-similar, we can actually see that the behavior is more prospectively controlled, where the agent is interacting with a more predictable environment and is determining their own actions at their own pace. So, for example, if someone was to walk down an empty field without any obstructions and was just told to freely move around the field as they wanted, versus if the signal had a more stochastic-like element to it, where it wasn't self-similar, that's more indicative of an agent in a more reactive situation where they're reacting to environmental stimuli, and that's determining a lot of their movements. Realistically, no behavior is perfectly prospective versus reactive. Most behavior that we have every day as humans and most animals falls within this kind of pink signal noise, so an alpha value of roughly 1, which shows that it is both subject to reactive control where we are being influenced by our environment, but we also have a degree of prospective control in influencing how we decide to move and behave. So this brings me to the current study, where we're examining team performance and search behaviors with varying access to information. So within our experiment, there were 2 key manipulations that we used. The first being participants' access to information through a HUD. So we had 2 variations of the HUD, the first one being called the local HUD, the second one being called the global HUD. Effectively, the local HUD only provided information about participants' location relative to the central containment location, which is blue circle in the middle of the map, and the global HUD provided information about the location of where the central containment area was, where the participant was, where their team members were, and lastly, where every single target agent was, and as well as their state, whether they were stationary, whether they were being chased by another team member, or if they had been contained. Our second key manipulation was the visibility of the map. So we either completely gave participants full visibility, where they could see from one end of the map to the other, or we severely occluded the participants' vision by inducing a fog-like haze throughout the environment, which reduced their visibility to about approximately 10 meters, greatly inhibiting their ability to visually search the environment. So with this, we made a few predictions. Firstly, we predicted that in order to divide labor, participants will introduce a search and conquer kind of solution where they will divide up the task space and be like, you take this third, I'll take this third, and they will collectively just search their thirds and bring target agents back in. And we believe their ability to effectively and adequately partition up this task space would be impacted by how much information they had in terms of their ability to visually search the environment and reference their position relative to their team members, as well as their ability to just look at the minimap and see where they were relative to their team members and the target agents. Furthermore, within the actual division of the task space, how they actually structured their search, we predicted that initially teams would be very reactive to the robotic agents, but with practice, they would gain familiarity with the task and be more prospective in their behavior, and able to plan more prospectively about where they were going to search, how they were going to undertake their search, and that their ability to be prospective was very much contingent on their ability to have information about the task state, so that when they had more information via the global HUD and greater visibility, they would act more prospectively. But when we gave them a deficit in the information, particularly when they did not have access to the global HUD and visibility was low, that they would be much more reactive in their behavior, and we were measuring this using a detrended factorial analysis to give us that alpha values I was talking about before. And so, with regard to the relationship between performance and prospectivity, what we predicted was that more prospectivity would lead to better team performance. So, in regard to the actual method of it, we had 10 teams of 3 participants each. We brought these participants in for 4 sessions, 1 week, each session being an hour and a half. Within these sessions, we were trying to get participants to complete 16 trials. The trials were each 5 minutes, and they were comprised of our different factors. We did have an extra factor, which was number of target agents. So we had a 2x2x2 design leading to 8 unique trial conditions. So for each session, participants were completing each unique trial condition twice. For the purpose of this presentation, I've actually dropped number of targets as it was not particularly insightful into the behaviors that emerged. So because of COVID, we asked participants to complete the experiment online from home, and we also had them utilizing Zoom throughout the task, and they were allowed to freely communicate. We did record this communication data, but it's not part of this analysis. So in general, our results were consistent with our predictions. Firstly, as a measure of task performance, we investigated how long it took participants to complete each condition on average, and what we found was that with experience and greater access to information, so as measured by the global HUD and higher visibility in the task environment, participants performed better as measured by a lower trial duration, so they completed the trials quicker. So to assess the degree to which participants divided up the task space and divided up the labor, what we did is we examined the degree to which their search areas overlapped. So we did this by generating a time series based on participants' movement data around the task environment and generating polygons based on that and looking at the areas of overlap of those polygons and calculating the ratio of overlap to non-overlap. So again, in line with our results, what we found is that with experience, participants reduced the amount of overlap they had, and that with greater access to information, so again measured by the global HUD and high visibility in the task environment, they led to a lower degree of overlap and thus a better ability to partition the task space uniquely. To assess the degree of prospectivity in participant search behavior, we took the time series of participants' change in angular displacement and submitted this to a detrended fluctuation analysis. So our results showed that with experience, participants showed more prospectivity in their search behavior, and with a greater access to information as measured by the global HUD, participants had a greater ability to plan prospectively in their movements. So in regard to how prospectivity influenced task performance, in session 1 we did not really see a relationship between prospectivity in players' search behavior and task performance as measured by trial duration, except in the highest information condition, which was the no-fault global condition. However, in session 4, we generally did see a relationship between prospectivity in search behavior and task performance, as 3 out of 4 conditions showed a significant negative relationship between trial duration and prospectivity. So with more prospectivity, teams performed better. The only exception to this was the lowest information condition, which was the fog local HUD condition, where it's arguable that players did not have enough information to effectively prospectively plan their search behavior. So with regard to future work, we have a lot of future work to do, both using this paradigm in general and also still analyzing the data from this particular experiment. So we're still looking at the role of conversation in this experiment, as well as we're still interested in how teams learn to utilize the HUD throughout the experiment and how they're using this to structure their search behavior. We also saw evidence of the emergence of roles at particular phases of the experiment. We're interested in further exploring this. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to completely analyze the data for this publication. And lastly, in line with the overall aim of our research program, we're looking at how we can design artificial agents to act as efficient teammates for these kind of tasks and augment humans with AI human teams. So thank you. My name's Matt. I'm from the Complexity in Action Research Labs, and thank you for your time.